Welcome to the Holdo Maneuver podcast. I'm Marc.
And I'm Mike. We're two hardworking dads trying to immerse ourselves into Star Wars and fit it into our very busy lives.
If this is your first time listening and or watching, in this sometimes short-form Star Wars podcast, we'll share our thoughts on different topics from a galaxy far, far away. So join us as we prepare to execute the Holdo Maneuver. All right,
You gotta go to Arizona, don't you?
Yeah.
He'll be back. Don't worry.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 52. Yeah.
L-I-I.
Yeah. L-I-I.
Lie.
So this week we have a big crew to talk about the latest episode of Ahsoka. We got Gyorfi in here, who's returning, has been on a few episodes. We got Kai coming back to talk about Ahsoka, and Ted, I don't think you've been on Holdo yet. You've been on Animation Fascination, but this is your debut on Holdo Maneuver.
His debut.
To the Holdo Maneuver.
First time for everything.
Yeah. But, Gyorfi, you had something you wanted to tell us up here up front.
What's the best way to take out Balin's skull?
Well, he kind of took himself out.
Just brute. How?
Kick his shin.
Nice.
The loop did not play.
Shin
Sorry.
Batty.
It was too quiet.
The sound.
There we go.
The sound.
Of course, now it plays twice.
So nice. It had to be played twice.
Twice the soundboard, double the fall. But yeah, so welcome everybody. So previously on the Holdo Maneuver, we talked about part 1 and part 2 of the whole. I was going to say of the Holdo Maneuver of Ahsoka for Master and Apprentice and Toil and Trouble. So since Gyorfi, Kai, and Ted, since you guys weren't here last week,
I was there last week.
Yeah, he was.
Well,
Yeah.
So you were in the chat. So who wasn't on camera?
he was
last
blowing
week?
us up.
Yeah. We'll go round robin with you guys.
He was agreeing with Kenny on far too many points.
Yeah. So we'll start with Gyorfi, then go to Kai, and then Ted, because I think Ted's got the most thoughts on that. So take it away, Gyorfi.
I have had a very hard time with the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka, to the point that I fell asleep through them 3 times each.
Dang.
Episode 2, it took me until a 4th viewing to make it past the title drop.
Oh man.
I was getting that out of it. And after the commitment to this episode, I think I'm going to be stepping away from Ahsoka for a little bit.
Oh dang.
So I've been finding it very empty, and the acting much drier than even like what Lucas would ever have you have in the original, like from New Hope, like from that original movie. Like that acting's dry. This is I've had bad dates with more charisma than everybody's acting.
Oh man.
Well, there
And
you
by
go.
dates, I mean like the fruit.
Oh. Bad dates.
Yeah, bad dates.
Nice.
So I'm sure you guys have a lot more kinder things to say. I'm just finding it's so empty, and like even scenes can be cut down because there's just elongated shots on things of nothing happening. It feels. Yeah, that's my big thoughts on there.
All right.
Hot take off the bat.
All right, so segueing we'll go to Kai.
All right. Well, I do have some more positive things to say about Ahsoka. I think so far the fact that we haven't gotten there has been 0 scenes on Tatooine. I feel like this is already a win for going in a new direction.
That was one of my
Um,
pluses.
Yeah, and honestly,
0 scenes on
I
Tatooine
haven't
yet.
watched Rebel. Yeah, I know that's fair. Yet, um, I haven't watched Rebels, so I don't have that connection to it. I know a lot about Rebels just because I love Star Wars, so I'm keeping up with all the big things that happen in the show, just like through clips and stuff. But really, my connection to Ahsoka comes from watching Clone Wars, and she became one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. She, especially the final season of Clone Wars, she's just amazing, and her connection with the clones has always been awesome. So it's weird to see her in a show where she's not interacting with clones all the time. I miss Rex for sure. Maybe we'll see a Rex cameo sometime in the show. That would be really cool. But so far in the first, I'll speak on the first 2 episodes since we'll be talking about the third one later. But I thought that the new style of opening crawl was interesting. I don't know if I loved it, but I definitely loved that we're getting back to kind of that style, because that was something that I really enjoyed about Star Wars. And so having it kind of in a new way, I think is really cool. And I think it's good to break off from the boxes that we've been in, but I still not sure if this was exactly the right kind of opening crawl, but I really like that we're going in that direction. And I think in general, I just love lightsabers and I love Jedi. So anytime that's happening in the show, like I'm just so excited. So I've enjoyed this show more than I think any of the other shows so far. I really liked Andor, but it like didn't quite give me that Star Wars feel. And I think Ahsoka, it's not the most action packed or it doesn't move along super fast, but it's giving me that Star Wars feel that I have been craving for a long time. And obviously with Obi-Wan, I was craving something more Star Wars, so I changed it. But in terms of the
Just a
shows,
little.
yeah, I think so far I like Ahsoka. Don't love it, but I like it.
Episode 49, we talk about that. If you want to go back, talk about Kai's cut of Obi-Wan.
I will just want to add back, I did love the Dark Jedi opening in the first episode. That whole deal in the first episode was fantastic and really got my hopes high. And then I was just fading.
What really quick to what Kai was saying about the opening crawl. I think I said it last week. I don't remember though. Was that it felt very reminiscent of like the Blade Runner kind of the opening crawl of Blade
Yeah, you
Runner,
did say it last week.
Okay, I can remember. Everything is a blur. But, yeah, so even like with the red text and everything like that. But now we will see what Ted has to say about the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka.
Well, I had made a list because I was like, well, I want to start with positives and then go into kind of a little more like, okay, so David Tennant as the robot was one of the biggest pleasant surprises to me. I was like, I know that voice. And I had to look it up and I was like, yeah, it's David Tennant. I got really excited over that one. I love the aesthetic of this one because Star Wars, the original trilogy has a look. And to me, I feel like they kind of more nailed the Star Wars look in the prequels. Like, if you ask, like, what planet do you want to go to? People are going to say, like, Coruscant or Kashyyyk or the interesting planets. No one wants to really go to Endor. I can go to up north Arizona to, like, see that. But, like, I think they really nailed the planets and the aesthetics in the prequels. And something I loved about Clone Wars and this series is how much they're trying to marriage the two, the ruggedness of the original trilogy, that gritty, rugged, ness flavor, with the like the Garden of Eden look from the Clone Wars. Like, you know, they're still in this perfect universe in like in the prequels, and then they're like thrust into this gritty world in the original trilogy. And I think it's doing a good job at marrying those two feels, those aesthetics. And Clone Wars, especially the TV series, I thought did a good job at marrying those two. The planet that they're on, I was like, this is discount Coruscant. But I was so happy we're not on the desert planet again. Like, how many desert planets are there?
So really quick, so if someone's watching video of this, everyone that has watched Star Wars Rebels, and raise your hand. Just dang, not even you, Gyorfi? You haven't watched Rebels? God damn. So it's just me. All right.
I watched like the first season, and it was like two children driven. You know what I mean? Like I just felt like, and honestly, I had a bad taste in my mouth from Disney like discontinuing Clone Wars and going right into Rebels, and I was like, it was probably like my own hate that wouldn't let me watch Rebels, because I was like, why would you take Clone Wars from us?
Okay.
But I've heard that it gets a lot better as it goes. But
yeah, I will say it kind of has the same trajectory as Clone Wars did, where it starts off like very young centered, and then basically grows up with the audience that's watching it.
So I've tried a few times watching the first season. I just can't get into it. So I was planning on hopping in to season 2 and trying to take it from there, and I might even just try to even like figure out the Darth Maul episodes, watch those for me, and see if then I can like get hooked from like the character that one of the characters I really want to see like the story from Rebels, and see, and then take it from there.
I will say that season 2 is more like Ahsoka heavy, because she shows up at the end of season 1, basically, more or less, and then like she's more of like a recurring kind of guest in that second season, and then there's more stuff with Maul in that second season too. The channel New Rockstars did a really good breakdown of. They did 4 different videos, like one for each of the seasons. So I guess for like some of you like that couldn't get past that first season, what you could do is watch that first season video that they did, and then just try to pick up from 2, 3, 4 after that. But they did a good breakdown of like all the key stuff that they think is kind of correlate into Ahsoka there too. So, and then everyone that's seen Clone Wars, I guess. So Kai, you said you've seen Clone Wars. Gyorfi, you've seen Clone Wars. That's okay. So then it's only Mike again. Sorry. All right. So I was just wondering that going into this, because that'll be like a good thing to keep in mind too for people watching Ahsoka, to see how much they can enjoy it without having like that whole kind of built-in kind of knowledge or relationship with some of the characters that are in Ahsoka now. And
I do have a question for the Rebels viewers, because in all the clips and stuff that I've watched, I never thought Sabine was ever training with Ahsoka in any way, and it seemed like in Ahsoka they'd been like, oh, she tried to train her before or something like that. Is that right? Yeah. Like, did they just kind of decide that she was training and kind of retcon that, or?
So that's like I guess like a shared mystery for people that both watched Rebels and didn't watch Rebels. I'm assuming it happened sometime between, because Rebels ends basically kind of where Rogue One picks up. There is an epilogue That's at the end of Rebels, which is basically, I'm assuming, is supposed to be the last scene from episode 2 of Ahsoka, because it's almost like shot for shot redone that way. So, and that's, we know where this is set, like 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So it could have been somewhere within that time period, like that 10 to 15 years there, that they could have trained in that time. But that is like kind of like an interesting like history that nobody has seen, whether we watched Rebels or didn't.
Okay, Marc, for you too.
Yeah, because I feel like. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kai.
I was just gonna say, I feel like I've seen the clip of the end of Rebels where like Ahsoka the White comes out with her cloak and staff and stuff, and I was like, oh, is that gonna be like later in the future? But then I did see all those like shot for shot things, and I was like, oh, they just changed that scene so that she's no longer in the white cloak, or does that happen at some point in the future? I don't know.
Yeah, because that would be. I think that's probably meant to be the same scene, because if it's not, that would be weird if they ended up later on. Yeah, and they're like, oh, this is weird. I have deja vu. We're like doing the same thing, because like Sabine even puts her helmet on, and like in the Rebels version too. So there's little differences. What were you gonna say, Gyorfi?
I was just, because we're on the topic of Rebels and comparing and contrasting with Ahsoka. I remember when I watched the pilot, that city area that like where the mural is was bustling and like had a lot of activity, and it's dead when we get there. There's nothing happening. Like, does that continue? Because that was like part of my problem, is this, that emptiness. There doesn't feel like there's life in this world.
In Lothal, like in Ahsoka, or like in Rebels?
In Ahsoka.
Aren't they all at the celebration, and that's like why the highway was empty?
Yeah, so that road in Rebels, like the
road to nowhere.
Yeah, because it's basically just the road to go out to like that like outpost that is basically like where Sabine is like living, where Ezra used to live, which is like a redone like military outpost for this, so they could see like what was coming in and whatnot. So I think that's basically, it's meant to be like or just like a road to this outpost, but it's not like meant to be anything else other than that.
In that pilot, you have them do like that heist against the stormtroopers on something, at least very similar road. So I was just questioning about that, because that's been a big issue. Everything feels so empty. You go to temples, it's empty. You go to ruins, it's empty. You go to the city, it's empty. There's no life. It doesn't feel like it's just 7 characters hanging around.
Yeah, I can get that. And then I think Ted, I kind of segued while you were still talking about your stuff, but back into your thoughts of the first and second episodes.
I kind of realized, like, I agree. I thought it was way too slow. I kind of thought nothing really happened much. The beginning of the second episode, I was like, is this Star Trek? Like, they're on a bridge, he's giving orders and everything. I was like, what show am I watching? But like, so I love Ahsoka character a lot, and I know Captain Kennedy has her heart set on a female lead in this Star Wars universe. And I kind of thought, as soon as they announced Ahsoka, I was like, this is that happy medium where the old fans can have a character they love as, spotlight center, but then also Kathleen Kennedy can have her female lead that she's been pushing for. And during the first 2 episodes, there were moments that I was like, is this Ahsoka? Like, there were moments I was kind of thought, this isn't the character I know yet. But there's been years I didn't watch Rebels, except for the one where Darth Maul has his comeuppance. Just because I wanted to see that scene. but yeah, like I don't know. Is this the one I've been waiting for to have Star Wars come back to my, happiness?
And then so for your
Time will
overall
tell.
thoughts on for your overall thoughts on episodes 1 and 2, then how did you like how overall what was your main takeaway from where that ended before we pick up with part 3 here?
I did think it was slow. For the amount of time I watched, it was the duration of a movie, and I kind of thought nothing really happened. And it's just, another MacGuffin to a MacGuffin kind of thing. But I feel I really want this character to have a great series, and the creator of the show, I really want to have confidence in him as well, because he created Ahsoka. It's his baby. I have hope. Nice.
All right. So from there, we will segue into Ahsoka Part 3, Time to Fly. So this episode aired on August 29th, which was yesterday. And it was directed by Steph Green again. She directed the Part 2 as well, the Toil and Trouble. Now, with this one, we're going to pull back the curtain a little bit. We're going to be explaining this episode to Ted as well. So just so people,
He's going to ask all the questions.
Yeah. So
I'll be the everyman.
Yeah, you played the role of the audience watching a recap. So yeah, like this one, I guess we'll go around. We'll start like round robin first with like overall kind of thoughts of Part 3. I know for me that I enjoyed like what this episode did, where it had a little bit of like everything that I usually like to see like within Star Wars, like with Sabine and Ahsoka going through with we had more training with them. There's a good scene there with Hera and the senators and Chancellor Mon Mothma, which I definitely want to get more into later on. And then overall, I liked the dogfight space battle in there too. So this one I felt like if you guys, I don't know if Gyorfi agrees, but where like the first two were kind of like a little bit slower in their pacing, I thought this third episode was moving pretty quick. It starts off a little bit slow with like the training sequence that it starts with, but then it like picks up and it's just basically one thing after another until it ends. And this episode was only like about, how long was it, Gyorfi, with credits? 35 minutes?
About 33 minutes.
All right. Yeah. So it was the shortest of the three that have aired so far. But those are my initial thoughts. So I will go to Mike, then we'll go to Kai, then we'll go to Gyorfi, and then we'll kind of do our recap from there after that.
Well, I enjoyed the episode to a point. I felt they had like 2 or 3 major bullet points, and then they really drew them out to fill the time. Like they had the training sequence, the dogfight, and then I didn't even know what the third point was. It's just like
the hyperdrive.
Hyperdrive Hera, something. It was just
hyperactive hyperdrive.
Not a lot. It was quicker, but not a lot happened at the same time. I felt there was a lot of exposition for people who haven't seen Rebels. Like they were over explaining things in whatever creative way they could to kind of catch you up. That's just my take on that. But overall, it just felt like not much happened, even though it was quicker paced. I did feel like I reached the end of the episode, but I was still only halfway through, if that makes sense. Like at one point I stopped it and I was like, how much time's left? And, oh, wow, we're not even halfway. I feel like it should have ended by now. Like that's just, I kind of got taken out of the moment with this episode, even though the opening training sequence, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Especially with the new, like when Huyang brings out like the beams where it shows where she was missing, where she was supposed to hit, and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And they go into the extended fight sequence between Sabine and Ahsoka, and it's like that was drawn out. Then they go into the dogfight, which okay, that was really cool because they're ships we haven't seen in live action before. But then it's like, okay, that was drawn out. It just kept getting to the point where I was like, this needed to end many beats ago, and like go to the next point. But again, I'm an Ahsoka novice or a B-Soka novice right now. So I was just intrigued to learn more about the character, and I got that in this episode. I still want to keep watching to learn more and see where it's going. I'll hold my overall judgment until at least I watch it all the way through twice, and then I'll make my final judgment. But overall, decent episode. I enjoyed it for what it was, but not much happened.
And then Kai.
Yeah, I think so far episode 3 has been my favorite episode. I think it had the most action and the most fun interactions between the characters. And I felt like I actually felt things from Ahsoka for the first time. You know, I felt her changing a little bit and deciding, okay, I can't just do things my way anymore. I've got to start kind of, you know, adopting a new way of life if I'm going to be a mentor to Sabine. So I enjoyed that part of it. And yeah, I think we'll talk about it more, but the Ahsoka fighting in space was so far my favorite thing that has happened in this show, and has probably my favorite thing that has happened in all of the shows so far, other than the Vader versus Obi-Wan fight.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, we
then
all
how about you,
loved
Gyorfi?
Cyril eating cereal from Andor. That was
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, I forgot about it. That actually is my favorite part. The action in that is insane.
And that's just fun to say. Cereal eating cereal on Coruscant. Then what did you think, Gyorfi?
I didn't fall asleep in this episode, so
Yeah.
that's a top praise for it there. I loved the recap of episode 2 because it made it seem like stuff actually happened. Like I was just like, where was this episode when I was watching it? I liked episode 3. It had a lot of reminiscent stuff to like the prequels with the dogfight. But it was just lacking. It just like it felt like the hollow shell of the opening to episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, with that dogfight, you know. For me there, I enjoy, you know, robot Scrooge McDuck from David Tennant. You know, like that's a thing that keeps me at least recommending it to people to check out, is David Tennant's voice acting. I feel like, again, it felt like a hollow a homage to A New Hope with Obi-Wan in the Millennium Falcon with Luke with the training when they put the blaster helmet on. There's just, it's like, I get it. I remember member berries, but like not quite hitting, you know. Yeah, it's just like there's a lot of potential I've been finding in the episodes, and then it's just, or especially this episode, and then just like it's just not there, not enough to like give me a satisfaction. And why can't Jason be like a green rabbit person? Just in general, I think that'd be the best Easter egg that they could do if a Twi'lek and a human looking thing had a green rabbit person as a kid.
Well, they're already committed to the humanoid because of how he showed up at the end of Rebels. But
They could have made it at the end of Rebels, him still being a green
Yeah.
humanoid rabbit. I mean, that's just.
oh, they did desaturate how bright green his hair was in the Rebels epilogue. His hair was very, very, very green.
Yeah, he doesn't look
in,
anything like his mom in this.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get to Jason in a little bit, but and for the people that haven't watched Rebels, Jason is the son of Hera and Kanan from Rebels. And spoiler alert, Kanan was in Rebels, but as you can see, Kanan is not anywhere around anymore. So I won't.
Yet.
They did a Kanan comic that was pretty decent.
Yeah, Kanan and so the whole relationship between Kanan and Ezra and Rebels too is like a Jedi and Padawan. I think is one of the best kind of pairings for that's been shown within all of the different series, whether it's animated or live action. And Freddie Prinze Jr. did a great job as Kanan in that series. So it would be cool if we do get to see some sort of representation of Kanan somehow in live action, but we shall see.
Kanan clone is the Inquisitor.
Yeah, there you go. He's Merrick. Kanan clone is Merrick. You heard it here. There you go. No one said that yet. Everyone thinks it's Ezra, but which I will say if Merrick that Inquisitor Merrick ends up being Ezra, I'll be pretty bummed out.
I like the theory about it being Star Killer.
Yeah, that would be cool if it's Sam Witwer. I just do not want it to be Ezra
because his character's real last name was Merrick.
Yeah,
and so I mean we don't need to get into that, but yeah.
But so now we'll kind of start our recap here, and then Ted, as we go along, if you have any questions or if you want elaboration on anything, just
raise my hand or
just raise your hand. Yeah, and ask.
Scream loudly.
And then just pull a white vision from WandaVision and be like, I request elaboration. So there you go. But yeah, so Mike already kind of and Gyorfi already, and I think Kai.
What's your take?
A little bit too, but like.
Oh yeah.
Well, no, Ted hasn't seen part 3.
No, he's asking you. Have you given your take?
Yeah, I said my take first.
Oh,
I don't remember that.
And then I round. Yeah,
I'm just making sure.
But
you're part of this.
I know it's all right. Yeah. So yeah, the training with Huyang, which I thought was, I liked how samurai-esque that was. In A New Hope, it's straight more of like a blaster shield type helmet, and that it felt way more samurai-esque with like the design of the blind face shield that Sabine had for training with that, and they even had like the wooden kind of katana training swords.
I got for the mask more like a fencing mask.
I was going to say it looked like a fencing mask, but I think they were going samurai feel.
Yeah. Well, it does look like also something you might wear in kendo. So.
Yeah, and I don't speak Japanese, but was Huyang, was he speaking a language that's within the Star Wars universe, or was he that almost felt like it might have been like Japanese for like the words he was saying for the moves for her to be doing? Anybody know that? I don't know if anybody knows that.
No, I was thinking the same thing though.
Within Star Wars.
I think the whole thing was supposed to be evocative of like samurai training. So even the language I think sounds Japanese, but I do not know what that language is. I would assume it's probably not Japanese. I assume it's some Star Wars language, especially
Yeah.
because Huyang has been around for so long, right? He's like older than Yoda or something.
Yeah, because he was in a bunch of episodes of the Clone Wars. Yeah, so like if anyone likes David Tennant as Huyang, he did the voice for Huyang in the Clone Wars as well, too. So if you haven't seen those episodes, definitely go back and check those out too. I know, Mike, you had some thoughts about the scene as well, and then I know Kai, you did too.
I echo what Gyorfi was saying, how they start the training, and I was like, basically like, okay, this is basically Luke's training without the blast shield and the ball that shoots freaking laser beams. Oh, like that's what I was expecting. Like when she's like, okay, we're gonna try something. I was expecting that helmet to come out with that little orb and all that. I also laughed that like they're flying through hyperspace doing this, just
Yeah.
practicing Jedi shit in the back of the ship.
As you
It's
do.
casual, man.
So always the hyperspace always kills me because it's like it doesn't affect the people in the ship that they're going that fast, and it's just I don't know. I always laugh at that.
Theory
Good
of
technology.
relativity doesn't exist in Star Wars.
Not in this galaxy, apparently. But yeah,
But
I was
maybe
just
in the
like
that they're going.
I enjoyed
Would that be a galaxy far, far away?
far, far close.
Yes.
But I enjoyed the training when watching Ahsoka just kind of like toy with Sabine, like knowing she'll never land a hit because she isn't one with the Force yet. It dragged a little bit. Like we got the point quick, and then they just kept it going. But that was just my own. That's just my own personal thought on that.
And then Kai, what did you think about that scene?
Yeah, I really liked like as soon as it opened and we saw Huyang with the four like holographic lightsaber beams. Like I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like I love when there's still new things in Star Wars that we can see, and it's not just always like, oh, we've seen this before in something else, and maybe we've seen it before in like Clone Wars or Rebels, but I didn't remember. And I thought it was just so cool, especially that it like recorded Sabine's like swipes, and you could see like where she was missing exactly where she needed to go. I thought that was really cool. I did think that the once they take out the kind of the blaster shield looking thing, it did feel a little too close to A New Hope, where it was almost like, okay, like I'd like to see it, acknowledged, but I don't need to see the exact scene again. Almost. I also felt like it was strange to me that Sabine wouldn't have been like, oh, not this again, like because if she was training with Ahsoka before and then Ahsoka decided to, not train her anymore, I feel like this would have been one of the first things that they did. So for her to not know what they were about to do, I was like, I don't know if that makes sense, but overall, I do like anytime like something that I felt the sequels were missing was like time with the Force and like really learning from a master and not Ryan Johnson's little, you know, his writing style is very much just like, oh, I'm just going to flip it on its head, So I liked seeing a master and an apprentice learning together in a way that felt more genuine and not just trying to poke fun at the universe itself, So I do enjoy when Star Wars takes its time to explore the Force, especially because I'm sure all of us here have been like Sabine and tried to force grab a cup at any point, and really be like, I'm one with the Force, I can do it, and so I enjoy those little moments.
It brought memories of Mallrats where.
Oh yeah, knock it off.
I just want to say, like, just listening to this and kind of thinking about it. Do you think Huyang is going to survive? And if so, like, would he end up at Luke's temple?
Maybe, and either way, then I guess he's kind of maybe screwed.
Yeah, but I'm just
Because
thinking, like, oh, where was Huyang for the Book of Boba Fett 3 episodes? There, you know.
oh yeah, for you guys that were on here last week too, I had said to Mike and Kenny and Aspen was, I think that Ahsoka is set like right after her debut episode in The Mandalorian, and before where she shows up in the Book of Boba Fett, and then that leaves space for her to somehow, at some point in the series, like we see her like meeting Luke, because like they had already like met each other, and like oh, that would have been cool to actually like see these two meet each other, seeing how they share this one person that was very important to both of their lives in different ways. Crap load of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I will say that specifically, like, for them to, in Mandalorian season 3, just like, or I guess it was Book of Boba Fett, they just kind of have Grogu go back after being picked up by Luke. I was like, you know, maybe they should have saved that Luke cameo for Ahsoka and have that be more of an emotional moment for Ahsoka and Luke, who both obviously know Anakin and Vader, and that I feel like would have been a much more powerful way to include Luke in these shows than like he like comes and picks up Grogu, and then Grogu is like, okay, actually I'm good, peace, I'm gonna go see my dad, and then like that's all they use. I don't know. And that's another topic, but yeah.
Well, then that also then would like lead to a mirroring for Sabine and Grogu, because Grogu went from a Jedi training to Mandalorian, and Sabine from Mandalorian to Jedi training.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
I've also wondered that too, like maybe Luke shouldn't have been seen already, but also like with the fact that they showed Thrawn in the preview for this, like why not just save that for a bigger impact in the show? Like now it's like, okay, Thrawn comes back, and we're all like watching this show. It's like kind of be like, oh, we're going to find him. We're going to find him. Well, we know they find him now.
But like, or is that all just flashback?
True, it could be.
And like, because we know that they're building towards something like a Thrawn movie too. So
yeah,
like I feel like, and that's what puts like a wrench in it for me for your theory, Mark, where it takes place before Book of Boba Fett. Because like, if they go out there, what's going to happen? Kind of thing. Because like, how can then you tie in like the Mandalorians joining up, or which seems to be what like was at least theorized that I've been hearing, like to build all the series to one point.
Yeah. And I know in that one trailer we saw it kind of looks like that bridge that's on that Eye of Sion, where he's like standing in like the same spot we've seen Morgan standing a few times now. So it seems like at some point he's going to be on the hyperspace ring. What we were talking about with that training scene, one of the things that I liked in that, besides it, I liked how it was kind of moving the plot while also kind of being used as exposition for people that may have not watched Rebels or some other things with that. But the other thing that I liked in that was the conversation that Bean and Ahsoka have, and the explanation of the Force in that. And there's a great scene. I'll send it to you guys if you want to watch it later. I'll put it in our show notes too. But there's a good scene from Rebels where Kanan is training Sabine with the dark saber in that, and it's basically talking about like how everyone has access to the Force, but is also about talent and to do what it takes to access it, which I like that kind of explanation of Force, where it can kind of be used in like normal life too, where like everyone has access to be like a filmmaker if you want to, but you also have to have this certain kind of like innate talent to be able to do it, and you also have to have that willingness to also have, you know, do whatever training you need to do and the focus and determination to be able to complete whatever task it may be. So I like that kind of correlation with how they're explaining the Force within that way. So it's not just about midichlorians in your body, but it's also
better than how many magical blood parasites you have.
Yeah, I mean that could play like a small part, but there's like that could be like, I guess, someone's like innate like brain, like their IQ or their muscle tone or whatever, for like whatever they're trying to do, whatever the task or thing is. I just liked how they explained it that way. But there's a good scene in Rebels where Kanan's kind of explaining that same thing, but I liked how Ahsoka did it here too.
Well, it could go the Scientology route where they got to hold those tubes and it measures whatever the heck's inside you, and you got to depurify yourself. No,
Episode.
it's kind of I enjoy that aspect of it being like, okay, you all have the Force. Jedi kind of took it this way, being like this number means something more than anything else, but you can't be trained unless you're at this number. So it's kind of like, I forgot what I think we were talking about Andor and how I have my own issues with organized religion. And seeing them like flip the Jedi on their head, being like, okay, you're all accepted. It kind of like just ties into that, like, oh, I enjoy that aspect because of my own issues with organized religion. Not to get on a soapbox about religion. I'll stop myself.
No worries. Do you have any questions, Ted?
About organized religion? No. But
I got answers.
The way you guys
are no match for a good blaster at your side.
It sounds like episode 3 is one I am excited to watch. You guys all talked positive about it, except for a little slowness. But yeah, episode 3, I'm like, maybe I should be playing it while you guys are talking about it. And
Yeah, I feel bad.
No
because
questions
This was
so
a fun one.
It is.
It will move faster than our review of it.
Yes.
This is true. We are
already
14 minutes over.
Yeah, we are longer than the episode itself. So from there, the next scene that we kind of get was with like you guys brought up, Sabine trying to use the Force in that cup. It's great.
I so badly wanted her to be like trying to get that cup and then have something else move accidentally, being like, "Crap, I'm not focused enough. I moved the wrong." Yeah, like she's focusing this way, and then like the pitcher moves, or something behind her falls because she's not focusing enough and she's not one with the Force enough. So I thought that would have been a great little comic relief moment.
Yeah, I'm pretty glad though that
like
they're saving her Force sensitivity powers. I think honestly, like to me, I think it would be way more interesting if Sabine ends up being a warrior who doesn't really ever hone in the Force, but she's still fierce and fearless, and can take on enemies. Because I don't know. I think that would be an interesting and unique way to go through the story. But at the same time, obviously, like if we want Sabine to really be able to go against the baddies at the end, I assume she needs some Force sensitivity. Even though she's already kind of fought with Shin baddie, she did get stabbed. So obviously she has a lot to learn. But I'm kind of glad that they're keeping her. I want to see her work for her Force sensitivity. I feel like we were missing that with Rey. Rey just like all of a sudden had Force sensitivity, and I really want to see somebody like start from zero and really hone their craft. Because like even Anakin, when at the end of Phantom Menace, other than him like having force sensitivity, he never really uses the force. We don't see that until 10 years later or 9 years later or whatever in Attack of the Clones. So to see somebody start from zero and then get to something, I think is going to be really interesting in the show. It might start off slow, but I think it'll be a good payoff.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that would be cool if there's specifically with like her abilities with or without force, like being like a slow like crescendo and build up to like whatever it may end up being. And even if it's just like what's his name? I'm blanking on his name. I'm one with the Force. The Force is with me.
Oh, the blind guy?
Oh.
Yeah.
Is it Chirrut?
Yeah. Donnie Yen Chirrut. Yeah, like even if it's like that, like where he wasn't specifically like a Jedi or anything, but he's still kind of like a connection to the Force in a way. So even if she has some kind of like where she's not, levitating stuff towards her, but like she's still some kind of connection and is able to access it in that way. Could be interesting too.
It's going to be like her detective sense from the Batman Arkham games.
Well, we see that Ahsoka has like the Force echo thing that like has in the like the Jedi Jedi Fallen Order Survivor games, where like you can kind of see like Force echoes of stuff that happened.
Before we move on,
I think it's cool that she is. Go ahead.
I have one little nitpick about that scene.
Oh,
all right.
And it's, what is the cup and table made out of? Because it sounds like Ahsoka's dragging a boulder when she pulls the cup over. Like in any video game, that
Yeah,
would be
I would assume. I assumed that the cup was some kind of ceramic thing, and then the table was like a metal sounding. But yeah, you're right. It did kind of have some interesting sound design.
If anything, we know that they're technically eating off the floor because her table goes into the floor and they walk over and then it pops back up. So hopefully they don't have any dirty feet or anything.
Delicious.
But
Quentin Tarantino.
So the next scene here. So like the next thing that we see her to, we go to the Hera on and see what she's doing. So here we see Chancellor Mon Mothma with Genevieve O'Reilly again, which is awesome to see her post Return of the Jedi, no longer bogged down by her asshat husband.
He still could be there.
From Andor.
We don't know.
I mean, he could, but she seems like she's a little bit happier than she was in Andor. It was just at least from this tiny little bit that we saw here, and then, like her.
She's free. She's no longer holding that secret.
Yeah, and she kind of has like this little. She has some kind of built-in like background relationship with Hera, like knowing like Jason and Chopper. So I liked that in this scene as well too. And then Mike, you had a question about the other senators that were in that scene.
Oh, yeah. We've seen this group of senators before somewhere. I forget where. So like, who are they? One, and why is the guy in the green robe gonna turn and be part of the Empire? It's just gonna happen.
Oh, for the first story, yeah. You see that?
I just don't know who all those senators are. But I've seen them in the grouping before. Maybe it was a preview for Ahsoka. I don't remember, but.
Okay. Apparently, one of them is the father of a character from the animated series Resistance 2, which that is actually I haven't seen either, but I know that show takes place in between episodes 7 and 8. Or I believe seven, I don't know, 8 and 9, or it's set within like that, like the later like trilogy era. But I believe like one of those senators, I guess, is the dad of one of the main characters from that show. But the other thing that I liked about this scene too is I really liked how Mary Elizabeth Winstead played the whole scene with like her fresh being able like almost kind of like the same way with like how it was working for Mon Mothma back in. Certain people were trying to get like this point across to people to get things done so that other things didn't happen, and you could feel her like kind of getting frustrated with like all like the bureaucratic stuff of not being allowed to go forward with trying to go after Thrawn, so that basically the Empire didn't happen again, which, spoiler alert, we know that it kind of does with the First Order coming back up. So this new Republic we've seen between like the Mandalorian series and the Book of Boba Fett, and like now this, like how much that New Republic kind of like freaking sucks, except for Mon Mothma, because she's still cool. She's not like all these other like senators and whatnot here. So that was something that I particularly liked, how Mary Elizabeth Winstead played that felt the most had in Rebels so far for how Mary Elizabeth Winstead has been portraying her in the show. And I think Kai, you had something about that scene too.
Yeah, I think I definitely I can see now, and I think that even Mandalorian season 3 was really trying to do this too. Is trying to show you the disorganization of the New Republic and how, you know, within 30 years the First Order rises to power again, or not again, but kind of through the Empire. Because these senators are not fun, and I did like the exchange between Hera and that senator about, you know, she's like, oh, so you just sat back, you weren't actually in the war, you just sat back to see who would win. And there was that long pause. I just thought that was a great interaction, and shows kind of Hera's rebel nature. But yeah.
I completely agree. This is probably my favorite part of the episode, just because I thought it was a solid scene. It both established, like, I felt like it gave us context of who Hera is from Rebels if you didn't watch Rebels too, as well as giving us more of that failure of the Republic. And again, you get to see how the senatorial incompetence leads to the downfall of the Republic, just like we did in the prequels. Here you can see it again. It's just through a different incompetence.
Yep. It's pretty standard in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Bureaucratic incompetence.
It's like poetry, it rhymes.
I was waiting.
It's got to be in every episode.
Yes. Go ahead, Ted.
I was going to ask, because your scene that you guys are saying in the third episode, where the training scene, I was going to butt in and say, is that rhyming too much with it? Because Star Wars rhymes a lot.
It does.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was having a problem with, where it felt almost a little too much like they were just rehashing a scene.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see a little bit more of a new. I mean, I think using like a Catan was a lot better than like having that little spherical ball thing shooting at them. That would have been like, okay, we get it. So we did take a little bit of a new stance on it, which was really cool to see, but it still was like, okay, yeah, like, well, I've seen this 1,000 times. Not only in Star Wars, but in other, you know, like even in it evoked like you know, what is it, Matrix? You know, it kind of had that vibe too. But you know, again, I'm down to see Jedi training though. So I just think we're constantly seeing like the outskirts Jedi training, you know, like
Mhm.
we're seeing training consistently from post Order 66. So like everything's very much like, you know, oh yeah, I learned stuff, but also I'm not really the best teacher anyways, you know. And it would be really cool to see more training from you know, the Jedi in their prime. I always enjoyed seeing like in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith when like all of a sudden we'd be, you know, in a room with Yoda with all the children and he's training, and like that was always really fun.
Hopefully for the
But
acolyte.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I am excited
the-
about that aspect.
But
or the film that James Mangold is wanting to do,
Yeah.
the origin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be cool too.
Going back, I feel like there's a difference between like the empty homages that like that forced training kind of feels like, where that senator scene, yeah, it's rhyming the whole thing, but it's being done slightly different enough, and it's being done in a way that's continuing to what we saw in Mandalorian in that episode with the cloner, and that like whole feeling of there is still the corruption, there's the failing system of Coruscant itself. There's too many cracks in it, and them using former Imperials to just kind of allows for wedges to exist that shouldn't.
Wedge Antilles? That not that wedge.
Not that wedge.
So the next scene after this too is like we talked about a little bit, but we see our first live action version of Jason Syndulla here, and we see that he wants to be able to use the Force. And we don't know for sure, but I'm assuming Tara would have told him that his dad was a Jedi. Wondering if she maybe like, cause she kind of gives a little look when he says that he heard that Sabine was being trained by, well, Aunt Sabine was being trained by Ahsoka. Oh, I want to be a Jedi, and she kind of gives like this like look where it's almost like she doesn't want him to go down that path too, because she already kind of like lost two people, or basically the only two people outside of Ahsoka that used the Force or that were Jedi. So maybe she'd be wary about like her son wanting to use it. That was one thing I thought with that too. But I liked this. I don't know how more often we're going to see Jason in this series, but I liked the little brief period that we did with Hera in this scene. And I think one of either Mick or Kai had something else about the scene too.
Yeah, I just was gonna say, and I know that Jason is from Rebels, but I'm like, it doesn't really seem like a fair mix of Twi'lek and human. It very much feels like a human boy, and maybe human genes are dominant in Star Wars universe. I don't know. This is probably, I think, the first interspecies child we've seen, I think, in live action at least. But yeah, to me, I'm like, I feel like he could have something to make him look more like a Twi'lek, but you know, that's fine.
I'm assuming that like humanoid genes must be the dominant one in the whole galaxy, because
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, but just like looking at Mandalorians too, because you see how like the lore of that, they were some other kind of completely different species, and as they take on more people and like intermingle between them, they've just become humanoid.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, then there, I guess there it is. Human genes are dominant.
And
it
that's
also makes
something
it cheaper.
that's it. Like, okay, so I also love Star Trek, but you can tell like their budget for their TV shows are just so low because they just like do a tattoo right here and they're like a whole new species. And I gravitate more towards Star Wars because they do come up with these races and these species that are like, yeah, that's not a human in a costume. Like, and they have more money to do those kind of things. And yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like that's something that I was missing in Andor was like everything felt way too human. I didn't feel like there were enough
Not
alien
alone.
species in the galaxy, and I was like, oh, like I want to see. Like that's why I love Star Wars. There are so many interesting.
I believe that was one of
species
my
out
biggest
there.
complaints too.
Yeah,
For Andor.
that whole. I mean, maybe that prison was segregated, but it felt like there should have been like more than just humans in that prison.
Yeah.
Where's those like big four-armed, four-eyed, weird snouted, like hairy dudes?
Yeah.
I mean, like
Because
stuff like that.
I could see the Empire, not to go off on a whole aside because we still have a few scenes to get through, but I could see, because the Empire is inherently racist with like how it like is set up anyways, because they're basically supposed to be space Nazis. So I could see them just having, because we saw how big and how many levels that prison is. So there's probably one whole level that's just all of the non-humanoid aliens on it, and they just kept all of them segregated like that. That's at least my own headcanon for why we didn't see too many.
Yeah, I
different
assume
alien species
also
in
that like because didn't the prison system have some like floor thing that would like
Yeah.
electrocute your feet? So like if there's an alien species that like doesn't have, it has like an exoskeleton or something that would make it, immune to that, then that would probably be dangerous. So I could get the segregation thing, but still it just felt like it was too human centric, that show. But anyways, back to Ahsoka.
Yeah. And then I think we already brought up, but maybe possibly we'll see a Force Ghost Kanan. So maybe, who knows if it'll be Freddie Prinze Jr. Maybe, I mean, because out of the cast from Rebels, he was probably like at least the only like live action actor, or at least the most well known action actor from that, outside of like who we've already seen come back within Mandalorian with Bo-Katan.
Freddie will do it. He needs money.
You mean Clancy
trying to-
Brown?
Well, yeah, Clancy Brown too. He reprised his role from Rebels.
Yeah.
He's not
you
in
know
this
what I mean.
episode.
Yeah.
Neither is Freddie Prinze Jr.
We're speculating
I'm just saying.
about this episode.
Marc says he's the best known actor from Rebels. Clancy Brown exists.
He's all that. He's all that.
Clancy Brown was Lex Luthor.
That's true.
And the world's like best Highlander villain.
Also true. But speaking of Clancy, he was not part of this dogfight space battle between Shin, Eric, and Ahsoka and Sabine.
Moving on.
But yeah, we've kind of
been.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been better probably if he was there too. He's like, hey guys, or maybe if he was this character from Mando, like the dude with the horns. Because he's been like 4 different characters.
Every episode needs some Clancy Brown in it.
Yeah.
Have him be Savage Opress again.
Yeah, what if it was a scene that just had all 4 of his characters that he's played in?
I'd love it. I'd love it. They could play poker together, and it would be the best 30 minutes of my life.
Although it would have to be.
He wouldn't fall asleep during that.
I really wouldn't.
It would have to be set during a very specific time period, since Savage Opress is no longer with us.
Sith can have Force ghosts if we want.
True.
So yeah, we had the dogfight, and
Technically, Anakin was Sith, and he's got a Force ghost.
He back to the light before he died.
Did he?
Yes, he did. That's a different
Wishful thinking.
And maybe he'll show up in this as a Force ghost too. So who knows? But again, that whole scene was like reminiscent of parts of Hope will wholly be kind of its own too. Because I almost expected Ahsoka to say that was great, kid, don't get cocky. Or Or I told my son how the Family Guy version of that scene went too. But
Don't get penisy.
yeah, that was great. Don't get penis. What did you, Kai, and Mike? You guys had notes about the scene too.
I can go.
Yeah, I just I really liked the scene. I think that a good Star Wars dogfight is always fun. I thought that the ships were a little too World War II plane looking, or World War
I said
One
World War
plane
One.
looking.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, and it just, you know, it's fine. I like new designs in Star Wars, so I'll take it. It I just think sometimes when designs are a little too close to home, it's like it takes you out of the Star Wars world just a bit. But I did enjoy the dogfight itself, and
See, I
the
felt
lasers in this one feel a little bit different than they've been in other live action. They feel a little bit more. I don't know. They feel sharper and more pointed and like more
They're
menacing.
turbo lasers.
So I did enjoy that. Yeah, exactly.
Whatever that is.
they're turbo lasers. They're more laser. They're blazer.
They're blazers.
I felt
No,
like the ship design.
Go ahead.
It kind of felt like a scrapped up version of those ships from Episode 3 that Obi-Wan and Luke or Obi-Wan and Anakin are flying. That had like the weird saw droids on them, and
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
just like they've been sitting in a junkyard someplace, rusted up, and had panels taken off of them and stripped down a bit.
Shin is using a
Mhm.
Clone Wars era like headset in her.
I noticed that. That was cool.
Yeah, so that was interesting. And then what did you have to say? Because you had a few things.
That was similar to what Kai was saying. I was like, this is like a World War One, World War II esque plane. 'Cause even when you hear them start flying in, you kind of hear that old buzzing that you used to hear in like the movies when they show those planes, like the propeller. Not that's where my ears went, and it was a cool scene. Like again, new ships are always welcomed instead of seeing the same old TIE fighters versus X-wings all the time. It's just like it started to get that feel, like the don't get cocky kid feel. And I was like, don't do it. Don't. And like I was glad they didn't do it, but I was sitting there thinking that someone was going to say something similar. It was interesting that Sabine was like, you got to fly differently for me to actually do something.
Right.
Like that was a unique take. I don't know if unique's the word, but different take.
Yeah.
And once again, it brings home the point. Why is everyone in Star Wars such a good pilot?
Because the
Like,
Force.
Everyone just like, I guess they don't show the crappy ones.
You have to
Or
have
the other
Jedi
ones.
reflexes to be a pod racer. So Jedi reflexes go into piloting.
I suppose. Yeah, it's
That's
like an Andor. Cassian's just like, it's this type of thing. You're going to notice there's a modification. It's like, well, how did he know so much about this machine that nobody else seems to know anything about? Like, anyone who's a pilot just seems to know way too much about flying in Star Wars because they know every ship. They can fly anything. They're experts at it all. But and also, I was good to see generic TIE Fighter #1 rebranded as another generic pilot just to get blown up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this episode is Time to Fly.
Yeah. True.
No, it was a cool little scene.
My favorite part of this, like, scene, the dogfight specifically, was that like Ahsoka does have a moment where she's like, okay, clearly something's not working with how I'm mentoring Sabine. And she has that moment where she has to go, okay, Sabine, what do you need from me? And then that's when they start working together and they start, actually getting ships destroyed on their tail. And I turned to my fiance when we were watching, and I went, I think that's the most emotion I've seen in Ahsoka live action so far. Like,
Pretty
was
close,
just that
if not,
moment
yeah.
where she actually looked like she was concerned and that she didn't have it all figured out. And what I love about Ahsoka's character throughout the Clone Wars and stuff is that she is very much like Anakin, where like she thinks she knows the answer right away, and so she like is constantly like, okay, I have to do this right now, and that doesn't necessarily always work out for her. And I know that we're a long way from when she was a kid in Clone Wars, but that that moment really made me feel like it was Ahsoka again. Like she has been so like headstrong and like, oh, this is what's gonna happen. This is what needs to happen. And then she finally in this episode had a moment where she was like, okay, clearly I'm not communicating well with my Padawan. I should I should like take a different approach. And that specific moment was I was like, okay, like I can see this show going in a better direction than like where Ahsoka's character has been in this just like stoic, almost uninteresting type of mentor. But it looks like Dave Filoni, just like Ahsoka in the beginning of the Clone Wars, he has a plan for her growth, and I'm excited to see that.
Yeah.
You give me a lot of hope. These are the words I wanted to hear.
Yeah, like I trust him because like that's kind of how his stories go. Like they build kind of like off a slow pace. They usually aim age-wise like a little bit bigger at the beginning of whatever the story. Not this so much because it's already like a character we've seen before. But then like it builds very quickly into like a crescendo, like a really emotional climax by the end of whatever story they're going to tell. So I have pretty good faith in him with that. The thing that I did like after, I guess it's kind of part of the dogfight still, was that we then saw Ahsoka spacesuit up and lightsabers in space, which I thought was cool because we've seen this a few times with like Anakin and Obi-Wan and even Ahsoka, and I want to say she wore the suit. The symbol on the suit, it looks like the Imperial logo, but that's also very close to what the original like Republic like crest looked like, because it was very easily just like transitioned to the Imperial after that. So I liked the whole sequence with Ahsoka being essentially fighting the ships in space and took one out with her lightsabers, and then had basically Sabine turn the ship to get her as she was basically Sandra Bullocking it out in space. But luckily she had her sabers on her hilt, and those didn't just like float out into the outer region of space. What did you guys think of this? I know you can comments, but did you have any thoughts? And then Ted, if you have questions, let us know.
Specifically this. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I mean, you got the written stuff. I was just going off my head here.
I just was really like, this was my favorite part of the episode, and it was like so cool to see. And I'm sorry, Ted, that you have to hear about it before seeing it, but hopefully it'll still be just as exciting.
But now I am excited.
Yeah, and I think I just like seeing Ahsoka in space. I noticed that she was like fully CGI for this, obviously, because it's hard to make zero gravity look good without using CGI. But usually, I'm like, oh, like it's weird to see a character fully CGI. Like one of the first in Indiana Jones, the last movie, in the beginning, there's a moment where he's running down the top of the train, and that's when his like the musical theme of Indiana Jones first comes on, and that that was sad to me because they decided to throw in his theme right when it's a fully CGI Indiana Jones running down a train instead of like seeing his face and something. But in this specific instance, I actually really liked seeing CGI Ahsoka because she is first a CGI character who has moved into live action, and seeing her animated in CGI in this show made me feel like it was the same character. Like she moves very much like how the animated Ahsoka moves, and like seeing her kind of flipping around in space, I was like, that feels like the Ahsoka that I remember in the Clone Wars. And my only gripe with that whole sequence was we know that you can use the Force in space. So the fact that she was even like floating around is weird to me because I feel like she could have just, you know, we've seen Mary Poppins force pulling herself towards a ship before. It's not that crazy.
Leia.
So I'm like, she didn't need to wait for Sabine to like, you know, flip the ship around so she could like get her footing. She could have definitely just like pulled herself to the ship or pulled the ship to her, especially because it's space and you're not working against gravity at all. That was my only gripe, but everything else was very exciting about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, since Leia was able to do it and she was frozen more than Ahsoka
she was freezing.
So she wasn't Elsa.
She was Star-Lording it, you know.
There you
go. Yeah. I actually found it to be really like hokey and kind of corny, that scene. I'm just like, it feels like, I don't know, something out of like the J.J. Abrams Star Trek, where you'd have like two guys out on the ship trying to do repairs and then they start fighting, and one pulls out a blaster and then shoots themselves backwards because of recoil or something. Like that kind of something that would come from like 60s James Bond in space more than Star Wars. I'm not expecting somebody to get out onto a spacecraft and throw their lightsabers around or swing their lightsabers around and deflect shots there.
It actually, I think, would have been way cooler if she had like used the Force to like torpedo her lightsabers towards them or something, so that they didn't have to get so close. You know, just like if she just like kind of let her lightsabers kind of go around and just, that would have been sick.
Just like
maybe if I do a re-edit.
Yeah, there you go.
She just has them like force spinning around.
Wait, so Kai, are you thinking about doing a one movie of this?
It really depends on how it all ends. I doing the re-edits it's a lot of work, and so I reserve that for things that I really am passionate about, and obviously I'm really passionate about Obi-Wan. I love Ahsoka too, but if it doesn't end well, if there's not like because I feel like the reason why Obi-Wan worked as a movie was because, first of all, it was written as a movie first, and then
it should have been.
Yeah, but also the climax I felt was satisfactory enough that like no matter what you kind of remove throughout the show, as long as you have a strong climax, people will leave going, wow, like that was great. Like I really liked that. So that's why, like, you know, it would be hard if Ahsoka doesn't have a super satisfactory ending, then like the movie would still fall flat either way, you know? So we'll see. I'm not promising anything, so don't quote me on that. But you know, we'll see.
I've already tweeted out that you're going to do it.
No.
You mean X'd out?
What?
X'd out.
Okay. Speaking of exciting climaxes, the episode ends or builds up to the scene where we finally. So in Mando, the premiere that we kind of saw like little hints of like the Purgles like within hyperspace from Grogu's point of view. Well, you know, Din's just pieced out, so didn't even see him. But in this, we see full on like fully realized, fully lit shots of the space whales themselves, the Purgles. I see Ahsoka just maneuver, and Sabine like just maneuvering around them as Shin and Marc are still coming after them. I thought that whole scene was very well done, and it was like, don't shoot the Purgles, don't shoot the Purgles. But Mike had this as a note. I don't know if he'll be able to come back because his young Padawan is turning to the dark side currently. Is that Sabine and Ahsoka didn't know the name, like the species name of the Purgles, which they showed up a few times in Rebels. So I think maybe I just like thought like it was like the Mandela effect or something like that, where like I thought that they already knew that they were called Purgles, but I guess not.
Well, I did when I rewatched that episode today, and I had read the notes before I rewatched it. But I think you could make a case that they didn't specifically ever say that they didn't know the name of them, but Huyang, like as they were talking about it, Huyang was like, "Oh, and those are star whales, known as Purgle," because I think Sabine said, "I haven't seen those creatures since Ezra." It doesn't necessarily mean that she didn't know the name, and it doesn't necessarily mean that Ahsoka didn't know the name, but that Huyang just like as a knowledgeable robot, especially like telling the audience what if you hadn't watched Rebels, or you didn't know anything about Purgle, I feel like that was really just a shoehorn line for Huyang to speak directly to the audience. If you'd never seen them before and you're like, what the heck? Like, then Huyang says, "Oh, they're a star whale called Purgle," not for the characters, but for the audience. That was my take on it the second time I watched it, but I don't know.
Yeah, it was cool to see them in this, and so I guess again for people that haven't seen Rebels, the finale of Rebels was Ezra in cooperation with the Purgle, wrapping like their tentacles like around like fleet of ships and stuff, and Ezra communicating with the Force with them, basically sacrifices himself and brings himself and like out into like wherever they are now, where they're trying to find them, and so that's kind of like where this at least journey is picking up within this show. The thing that Kai, I think you had a note about it outside of seeing them in live action.
This was the first time we've seen them in live action, other than just like seeing silhouettes of them, and that was very interesting. And I hadn't really thought about it until like we were faced with them, like right in your face. We're flying in towards them, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess we haven't seen them for real yet." And I really liked how they adapted their look to. I was a little worried because in Rebels they look cool, but they're very
cartoony whales.
They're very much like a cartoon character. They're a cartoon whale character, and I was like, I wonder how that's going to look in live action. And it actually surprisingly I think worked really well for me. I think it does basically just look like a whale with a squid end attached to it, but
yeah,
I think it's a very cool look for Star Wars. And it was great to see them finally.
That skyfall was a really cool shot.
Oh yes, like the descending the planet.
Yeah,
I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Ted, you're gonna like this episode, I think.
I love anything cartoon to live action done well.
Yeah.
And then so like in the scene, speaking of hyperspace, like with this, we get a little bit more like the Eye of Sion, and I keep on wanting to call it the Eye of Sauron, just because it's or if Mike was still here, I'd call it the Eye of Sauron, because that used to be like his whole thing when we were in high school. That's when Lord of the Rings came out, called Eye of Sauron. But yeah, like the hyperspace ring that Marc is using, it's like the biggest hyperspace ring for like where they're trying to travel to find where Thrawn and Ezra may be. And like the lasers that are like this was, I think it was the question Mike had too, like the turbo lasers that were on it that she's like getting all about like shooting Ahsoka and Sabine with. I thought at one second pull like the Han move where like they just like attach themselves to like the underside part. I guess there's not really an underside to like a circle, but like
I thought it was going to be like episode 2's with Obi-Wan's ship that
just a
had the
little
hyper.
tiny one.
And well, like, but I was expecting, because it's going to be so big for the purpose of moving it, that we're going to see something like a Star Destroyer hook up to it. Instead, it seems like the ring is the ship
itself. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's interesting. That like like the ring itself is just like a thing. Just that's if we see it move, which I assume that we will, that it'll be an interesting kind of visual to see a ring ship move through hyperspace like that.
Well, here's a little theory for you. Maybe it's not designed to bring anything to Thrawn, but maybe it's designed to bring whatever Thrawn has been building back.
So
Maybe.
So it's like a Stargate?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Maybe.
Like the little star.
I mean, maybe
out in the
like
stars.
maybe it doesn't need a ship to attach to go somewhere, but like you can attach something. So maybe they go get Thrawn, and then he's able to attach his ship with all of his cronies to go back. I don't know. I don't really know, but it could be interesting to see, because when Huyang was describing how it worked, again, he only has that information from his scan, so it might not be complete, but it sounded like there was nothing that would be attached to it for it to go. So, well, I guess we'll just have to see.
Where do you think they're going to go with Thrawn? Do you think they're going to take the books Thrawn storyline and run with that, or just something whole new?
The movie is apparently supposed to be Heir to the Empire, or like Heir to the Empire-esque. So what Gyorfi said, yes.
Because like I don't expect the weird picking up a Jedi and like convincing him to go after Luke, part of Heir to the Empire. I think
Luke.
Yeah, or Luke. I don't expect anything like that, but I feel like we're going to see something where there's going to be some kind of like reckoning for Ahsoka and the Rebels group, but also Mandalorians. I just from the way they have been like linking Ahsoka to them, and then they had the Mandalorian, the Purgles there. I just feel like there's going to be something, and I think too, this is something off topic. I just need to get out. Sabine is going to probably have like a katana style bladed lightsaber by the end of like her training, I assume.
Yeah, that would make sense with like
Interesting.
Like hilts are thinner, like a samurai katana.
Well, she also had the dark saber, and then you see her training with the wooden katana like stick. I feel like it's a foreshadowing there.
Yeah, and then if they get Ezra back, she'll have to give his saber back to him.
Exactly, and then it's also goes more aggressive to what her Mandalorian side would be.
Yeah.
But on like for the Heir to the Empire stuff, I feel like it's going to be similar for Thrawn itself, but different because we're not going to be dealing with the Luke, Han, Leia group. We're going to be dealing with our TV show group.
Yeah. And then so like the last thing of kind of that was in this episode to wrap up our discussion was that it ends with Ahsoka and Sabine hiding on Corvus in like the always autumn forest there. Kind of it's the same planet that has like the Outlander circle stone like temple area, and then
Stonehenge.
Yeah, like, and then just like a shot of Balin looking out and brooding, and that's how that ends. And so, as far as like stuff we've seen from the trailer that they showed for this yet, we've pretty much seen everything from that. Outside of there's like a part of a scene that's like Ahsoka and interacting there in that stone circle and talking about Anakin. There's also that one TV spot that had new Anderson dialogue, which was like reminiscent of story stuff from like the Tales of the Jedi shorts, because it seemed like at least for like what he was saying was reminiscent of that time period. And there's that one shot of Thrawn on like the deck of the Eye of Sion there. So I feel like all the footage that was in that trailer was probably within like the first 4 episodes. So maybe we see Thrawn by the end of episode 4, which would, because by the end of next week that'll already be halfway through this season, which is kind of crazy to think about. I'm excited to. I'm very excited for how that Anakin dialogue is going to be used. If that's just going to be like a memory that we end up seeing Ahsoka having, and if it's like shot and it's meant and it's like, you know, Clone Wars era, like, or supposed to be like Clone Wars era. Anderson is like wearing like the Clone Wars stuff would be kind of cool, or even if it's like maybe she sees a Force Ghost Anakin. So be interesting to see what that whole ends up how it ends up being used, because they don't show any of that, but they just like play his dialogue over that one spot. But
I feel like with the name of the planet being Corvus, there has to be something really Sith that, or not Sith, but dark that has to happen there. We know like Night Sisters were part to it, and I feel like Ahsoka or Sabine is going to have something to do with like the world between worlds, or some kind of dark force presence is going to enter them like in like the spiritual way, and project like hallucinations or something, just because like it's a planet called Corvus. What's this like? And like that's so close to the genus for like crows and ravens, which are tricksters, and like it feels like it sets itself up to something like that. And we didn't quite get that with the Toil and Trouble from episode 2.
So as we're wrapping up, did you guys have any like closing thoughts on what you wanted to say? And then after your closing thoughts, I let people know where they find you. Gyorfi, if you want to wrap out like what you were like, if you had anything else, and then give your info, then Kai, then Ted, and then I'll give mine last.
Yeah, absolutely. So as much as like talking about it, I've enjoyed the episode more. I still think I'm right now going to be waiting until the series is done and watch some more like reviews to see if I want to actually watch the complete next 5 episodes. Just because had such a hard time with those first 2, and even here I still feel very hollow with it. I think there's more fun in the discussion and the theorying, just because that's also what like a round table leads to. Yeah. So hopefully we haven't built you up too much, Ted, where like you then are completely disappointed. Outside of that, like I said, I'm going to be dipping out from the series outside of reviews. And probably for the chats, I'll be here for some of the chats, at least if we do live episodes of this. So, but you can find me at on Instagram and Threads at Beef Miniature Gaming. You can also find my podcast, Rant to the Future. It's not had anything really recent besides for our crossover with Animation Fascination and Into the Vectorverse, and Sandbox Gamer, where we talked TMNT. But that's going to be going through a whole reboot as I'm going through school for doing that. Yeah, so that's where you guys can find me. Yeah.
Nice. Thanks, Gyorfi. Kai?
Yeah, so I'm hopeful of where this series is going. So it's funny because when the Star Wars shows were coming out, like Mandalorian specifically, I remember just being so hyped every single episode that was coming out. I was like, I have to stay up and I have to watch it right when it comes out. And I think now I've become a little jaded by my experiences with the shows in general. So now, even though I enjoy Ahsoka, like, I'm not like dying to watch it right when it comes out. I mean, now that it comes out at a reasonable time of 6 p.m. My
I do
time,
appreciate that a lot.
it's way better. I don't have to stay up, but I still am just like, oh, I'll get to it when I get to it. And it's usually the day that it comes out, within a couple hours of it being out. But I'm I'm more just sad just in general at like the state of Star Wars where like I'm not jumping for joy every single episode that I get. But I'm feeling a lot better about Ahsoka than I felt about the third season of Mandalorian. So that gives me hope, and I'm excited to see where we go. And people can find me at Kai Patterson Films on pretty much every platform except for Twitter. I'm not going to call it X. Twitter. It's Kai Patterson Cut because films wouldn't fit. And you can also find any of my stuff on KaiPattersonFilms.com. So yeah, and I guess Ted will throw it to you.
Really quick aside before Ted. I really do appreciate the 6 p.m. Pacific drops that they're doing. I hope that
Yes.
continues for the Marvel shows and any other future Star Wars shows. Because,
feels like a prime time.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
appreciate not having to avoid spoilers all day because I didn't wait up at midnight. And like even if I didn't go like on
Yeah.
social media that day, I just went on YouTube to listen to music or something because of the algorithm of stuff I already watch. I'm gonna get the videos and thumbnails, which I usually try to use thumbnails that are spoilerific to like whatever we talk about here, because I try not to be like a douche to someone that's just on YouTube and they haven't watched
Yeah.
anything yet, and they're like, oh, okay, that person died in that episode. I've liked being able to watch these first 3 episodes not knowing, sorry Ted, anything that was gonna happen in the episodes before I watched it. So with that, I'll segue over to Ted, who has now had this entire episode spoiled for him.
I have similar sentiments to Kai that like I feel kind of burnt out on Disney Star Wars right now, and like so much stuff that I'm not excited about. But when they announced Ahsoka, that was one that I was like, okay, this has serious potential. She could be the face of Star Wars for now on. You guys did get me excited to watch the 3rd episode. And yeah, I'll probably watch it tomorrow at work. Don't okay, if anybody from work is listening, yeah, don't say anything. But no, yeah, you could find me probably just best on YouTube at Ted Sowards. My Twitter handle is Ted Here, HERE. And maybe I should just go by that on everything. But yeah, no, I'm excited.
Nice. And then for HoldoPod and Mike and I, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at HoldoPod. And then Mike and I are at our respective names on those places. And then you can also follow our editor on all of those places as well. And then,
As always, we are grateful to George Lucas for creating Star Wars universe.
yeah.
Oh, dude, thank the maker.
Yeah, so
Okay,
that was
well,
the best ending to this episode ever, everybody. So thank you for joining for episode 52 of the Holdo Maneuver. That was for episode 3 of Ahsoka, Time to Fly. So with that, go listen to some Foo Fighters and because now it's time to fly. So with that,
Let's learn to fly.
well, it's time to fly now.
It's time like these and learn to fly.
It's
They fly
it's-
now?
It's a remix. Yes,
They fly now.